Hello and welcome back to the William Gomes podcast. I am William Gomez and I'm grateful to have you here. This series is called Reading Seminar 1 and 2, Lacan's Return to Freud Revisited. In the previous episode, we examined Sigmund Freud's discovery of the unconscious and the way that discovery was gradually transformed within post-Freudian psychoanalysis. We saw how conflict was softened into harmony, how symptoms were reframed as deficits, and how analysis increasingly oriented itself toward adaptation and well-being. In this episode, we take the next necessary step. We clarify why Jacques Lacan insists on a sharp distinction between a psychoanalysis and psychology. This distinction is not rhetorical, it is structural, and it has decisive consequences for how analysis is practiced. To understand Lacan's position, we must first be clear about what he means by psychology. Psychology, as Lacan understands it, is a descriptive and empirical discipline. It observes behavior, categorizes traits, and evaluates functioning. Its questions are practical. How does the individual adapt? How do they function in social reality? How can difficulties be corrected or compensated? Within psychology, improvement is measured by observable change, reduced symptoms, increased stability, improved relationships, and enhanced self-regulation are taken as signs of success. There is nothing inherently wrong with this orientation, but for Lacan, it is not psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis does not begin from observation, it begins from a structural hypothesis that the subject is divided, that speech exceeds intention, and that psychic life is not governed by conscious mastery. Where psychology asks how the individual functions, psychoanalysis asks how the subject is structured. This difference is crucial. Psychology treats the individual as a unit. Psychoanalysis treats the subject as a split. Psychology aims at adjustment. Psychoanalysis attends to truth. Here, we need to be careful. When Lacan speaks of truth, he does not mean accuracy, sincerity, or self-knowledge in the everyday sense. He means something far more unsettling. Truth in a psychoanalysis is not something the subject possesses. It is something that appears in a speech, often against the subject's will, and often in a fragmented or distorted form. This is why psychoanalysis cannot define its success in terms of well-being. Improvement can occur in analysis, symptoms can shift, lives can change, but for Lacan, these changes are not reliable indicators of analytic truth. Why? Because improvement can function as a defense. A subject may become calmer, more productive, or more socially adjusted while remaining entirely alienated from their desire. Adaptation can stabilize suffering without touching its structural cause. From a psychological perspective, this looks like success. From a psychoanalytic perspective, it may indicate that the unconscious has been silenced. This is why Lacan insists that psychoanalysis cannot take cure as its criterion. Freud's discovery showed that psychic conflict does not resolve simply because the subject understands it. Insight does not guarantee change, and change does not guarantee truth. The unconscious does not aim at harmony. It repeats, insists, and disrupts. If analysis aims to eliminate disruption, it risks eliminating the very site where the unconscious appears. This leads to a further consequence. If psychoanalysis is not psychology, then the analyst cannot adopt the role of guide, educator, or healer in the usual sense. The analyst cannot promise balance, happiness, or maturity. To do so would already align analysis with psychological ideals of normality. Instead, the analyst occupies a far more precarious position. The analyst listens without aiming to correct, intervenes without guiding, and resists the temptation to reassure. This is not indifference, it is an ethical stance. Lacan insists that analysis must remain oriented toward truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable, destabilizing, or at odds with ideals of health. This is why psychoanalysis often appears strange, even hostile to common therapeutic expectations. People often come to analysis seeking relief, advice, or understanding. They want explanations that will restore coherence. Analysis does not necessarily refuse these desires, but it does not take them as its compass. Instead, it attends to how these desires are articulated in speech, what positions they imply, and what they conceal. This is also why Lacan is wary of the language of success. A successful analysis is not one that produces a well adjusted individual. It is one that allows the subject to confront their division without relying on the other to guarantee meaning or desire. This confrontation is not comfortable. It does not promise happiness, but it preserves what Freud discovered. To confuse psychoanalysis with psychology is therefore not a minor theoretical error. It changes the entire orientation of the practice. When psychoanalysis becomes psychology, the unconscious becomes a problem to be solved. Desire becomes a need to be satisfied, and technique becomes a set of tools for managing behavior. Lacan's return to Freud resists this shift. By insisting that psychoanalysis is not psychology, Lacan preserves the specificity of analytic listening, interpretation, and ethics. This insistence prepares us for the next crucial step. If psychoanalysis is not psychology, then its medium cannot be behavior, observation, or advice. It must work through something else. In the next episode, we will examine why Lacan insists that speech, rather than communication or behavior, is the fundamental medium of analytic work, and why this insistence transforms the analytic situation itself. Thank you for listening. This is the William Gomes podcast. Take care of yourself, stay curious, and if you found this episode helpful, you're very welcome to follow, share, leave a comment, or a rating. I'll speak with you again soon.